The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, the Sega Game Gear, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes are joined by full-time game enthusiast and part-time lifeguard Dan King, the Game Boy Geek. Together, they'll review CGE's Pulsar 2849. They'll also take a look back at the Dukes review of Kanagawa in their Dukes Double Take, and in a first mention of a different kind, some breaking news about a new sports game coming down the pipe. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
I'm just kidding. I was gonna beat you down, Alex, but I was actually a little surprised and disappointed that in the original intro, you did not try to defend or knock down the champion of all intros, which is the one I did when you were gone on your little worldwide escapade. I was expecting for you to try to beat it. I'm kind of happy you didn't, but you probably would have died trying.
We're already doing a callback to last one. Here's the thing: it's much easier when it's just one city, but now we have two in the intro, so I can't use all my energy up on just Albuquerque. I got to spread the love. So Dan, I'm going to rise above our petty squabbles and differences.
I was about to beat you on the and then I started laughing. I couldn't help it.
That was my secret, Dan. In any case, that's Dan King, the Game Boy Geek, everyone.
Welcome back, Dan. This is your fourth appearance on the Dukes of Dice podcast as a co-Duke.
Yeah, I love being on here.
Well, it's great having you back, and it works out. It's interesting because our double take is Kanagawa, which was the exact episode that you were on last year. So it's like we worked it out perfectly.
Yeah, it seems to work that way.
It's like there's some timing element here that is similar this time to last year. I'm not quite sure what that is. Maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I think the third year in a row.
It is. Yeah, it's the third year in a row, the exact same week.
Yeah,
which is kind of
there you go. Well, I mean, we'll talk about it in greater detail, but of course, Dan, you've got a Kickstarter up right now for the fifth season of the Game Boy Geek?
Sixth
season.
Yeah, sixth.
I know, that's what I meant. I just want to make sure you knew, and you do. So good job. Well, Dan, it's great having you back. We love having you on. But real quick, we need to name this episode because that's a thing that we do. It's an important thing that we cannot forget. So this is episode 170. Welcome, everyone. We're titling it Artistic Highlights 2849, which is just a great mismatch of everything we're talking about in a lot of different ways. I'm not even sure if because Alex, in our Dukes on Deck thread on the Guild, you kind of hinted at some news dropping, and I'm wondering if Tim Tix, who named this episode, had some inkling of what that might be based on your hint.
He did, because while I thought I was going to be breaking news, and in some ways we're breaking news here, there was another thread on BGG that sort of broke the same news with the same name, and his original name completely referenced that altogether. And then I sent him a message like, "Did you have inside info on this? What's going on? I thought we were the first. Mike Fitzgerald, what did you do to me?" Yeah, it was just on another thread already. So I got beaten to the punch by BGG. Damn it.
Yeah, man. Well, so incorporates Kanagawa with the artistic, and 2849, of course, is referencing Pulsar. It's a great title. And in fact, if you want to help name the Dukes of Dice episode titles every other week, you can go over to our Board Game Geek Guild number 2008, where we put up our Dukes on Deck, and you can help us out over there and add some discussion about the games we'll be talking about. What we'll do is at the end of the episode, we'll give you the rest of the top 6 title suggestions. So how you guys doing?
Fantastic.
I'm good. I'm recovering from a night of scotch and board games.
Oh, all right. Well, that's good.
But I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling all right.
I was saying off air, Alex, that you don't really strike me as the scotch drinker.
What kind of drinker do I strike you as?
Zima?
I don't think I've ever had a Zima in my life.
He totally is the kind of thing.
Did you like how there was no delay there? It's not like I had prepared for that, but I just know the answer.
No, you were thinking of the best possible slam as soon as I started asking the questions, and then that's where the lawyer mind immediately went to. I get it. I have never had a Zima in my life, but I appreciate it.
Bartles and James may have been a little too old But I think Zima's perfect. I think Zima's the perfect answer.
Excellent. Great. I don't have an equally mean answer to throw back at you, so I guess we'll just leave it there. But no, I'm good. Beyond that recovery, frantic prepping for a Kickstarter of our own from Monochromatic Wolf Play Experiences, which I will not talk about because that is too much shilling, and I can't do that. But we have one coming pretty soon, so keep an eye out, I guess. Or don't. It's fine. Oh my goodness, I'm so nervous.
I feel like I'm doing something wrong with my life because, Alex, you're about to get another Kickstarter going. Dan, you're in the middle of your Kickstarter. And here I am, just Kickstarterless. Just backing stuff on Kickstarter. I'm putting all the money out there, and I'm not bringing any of the money in. I'm doing something very wrong.
It's overrated. Keep the stress away like you do, Sean.
Yeah, exactly. Well, real quick, before we start talking about some games, I want to point out something. Right now is open nomination period over on Board Game Geek for the Golden Geek Awards. So if you want to go over there, you can nominate, your game of the year, best 2-player game, best strategy game, all of that stuff. But there's also a category for best board gaming podcast. Now, the Dukes were nominated the last 2 years. And so we'd really love it if you go over there and help nominate the Dukes of Dice for a third year. And hey, while you're there, you can nominate some of your other favorite board gaming podcasts, such as The Dice Steeple.
Yeah, which probably, I just have a feeling niche within a niche is not going to get a Golden Geek Award. But hey, I'd love it if you'd like to listen to it. That's cool.
Yeah. And I'm going to make it easy on everyone. You can go to dukesofdice.com/vote-dukes. dukesofdice.com/vote-dukes. And there's a quick little overview how to do it, and they'll give you the link to the BGG page, because otherwise it's actually kind of hard to find, sort of. But yeah, go to dukesofdice.com/vote-dukes. So that's the quick little plug about the Golden Geeks. We would be super honored with a third nomination this year.
All right, let's talk about some recent plays. Enough plugs, enough of all that nonsense. Last night, as mentioned, I was over at my Monochromatic Wolf buddy, Josh's place, to play some games. And we got in a bunch of stuff. We got in Fog of Love, which was pretty amazing experience. We ended up breaking up in that. So sad. The relationship between Ricky and Maymay just wasn't meant to be, I guess. We played some Crokinole, and we played some Cold War CIA versus KGB. This is a 2-player game where you are playing as either the CIA or the KGB. It is, at its core, what's the best way of describing this? It's sort of a blackjack-esque game, but there's an element of bluffing, because what you're going to do is there will be a mission. There will be a country you're trying to win influence over, and you will send an agent there. You will send a deputy director or a master spy or someone who has a special power. If you can win that region, which is defined as getting under its target number, so it might say, in a maximum of 4 cards, have no more than 11 points of influence in this place. If you can win that, that's great. You might get some bonus. You might get to assassinate the other person's spy. You'll get influence, victory points towards the game end. There's a little bit of a catch there in that one of the cards, the Master Spy, if you win, if your opponent wins the region and you play the Master Spy, you actually win it instead. So there's some element of bluffing and trying to manipulate things and manipulate the number of cards and try and ensure that you stay under that number and ultimately win the most influence. It's an older game, and I don't know. There's a scale that I try and think of, right? There's games that are well designed but not so fun, and there are games that are incredibly fun and you can tell maybe not the best designed games ever. This one to me fits into the fun, not necessarily well designed, but really fun, and we definitely had fun with it. Definitely, Josh wiped the floor with me as the KGB. The Team USA did not do so well in this one. Dan, have you played this one before?
I haven't. Who's the publisher on this one?
I think that's Fantasy Flight who did this one.
Okay, I have not played this one, but the way you described it reminded me of that 2-player game 13 Days. Does it play anything like that?
I don't know that game.
That was essentially like Twilight Struggle in a 30 to 45 minute game.
Okay. This doesn't have enough of a Twilight Struggle-esque feel, right? This would be, I guess, sort of Twilight Struggle, the very, very basic card game, though it already uses cards quite a lot. No, this is a 2007 title.
Okay.
So this is an older game that has stayed in Josh's collection for a very, very long time. But as mentioned by him, it doesn't stay in there because it's a well-designed game. It stays in there because it brings smiles to people's faces when he tends to play it. And in our case, it certainly did. It ended up being the one we used to wrap up the night, which worked out pretty well.
How long does it take?
It's a quick one. This is like a 30, 45 minute kind of game. It's not that long.
That sounds like something I'd like. I love those historical things. And as I mentioned, that 13 days game, yeah, it's basically a tactical card game that's about that amount of time. But wow, yeah, I want to check this one out.
Yeah, to take a peek at it. I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to find, as it was a wider release, I guess. But yeah, and definitely an older design. It feels like a 2007 game, but we had fun with it. So I think that's all that counts a lot of times anyway.
Yeah.
So that's Cold War CIA versus KGB. What have you been playing, Dan?
So I got a chance to play a party/reaction game that's coming out in April from Smirk and Laughter. Now, Smirk and Laughter is an imprint of a publisher that most people probably heard of, Smirk and Dagger, where they've been known for coming out with games that are all about stabbing your buddies in the back and messing them over. And now they have a whole new imprint of that called Smirk and Laughter, which is going to be about making new and fun experiences. And so this game is called Nut So Fast. Ha ha ha, Nut So Fast. See what they did there? Yeah. It's actually a brilliant party speed reaction game. So there's these huge, chunky wooden nuts, and there's walnuts and pistachios and almonds and Alex is going crazy. And you can't forget about so there's all different kinds of nuts.
Right.
And so what happens is people one at a time are flipping cards up to 2 cards, and as they flip these cards up, there's going to be different pictures of the different nuts. And if there's exactly 4 of one nut, everyone has to go and try to grab one of those nuts off the table. But for most of the nuts, there's one less than the amount of people. So someone's going to be left out, and they get all the cards in front of the active player, which can build up over time because you're not having a reaction every time you flip cards. So you might have a stack of cards in front of you. Someone misses it, they get those. But the other thing, there's some twists where, like the pistachio, same thing. If there's 4 of them, but there's only 1 pistachio. And if you're the first one to grab the only pistachio, you get to give all your cards in front of you to whoever you want. And then there's the almond, which is like really makes your brain go crazy, because if there's not 4 like normal, but exactly 7 of a nut, you grab the almond and you get to remove all of the negative points you've gotten that round. So like there's just enough going on with your brain that like you can't, it's not just a straight speed game where you're just like seeing and thinking, like there's actually thinking. The best thing I could probably describe this or compare this to is a popular game called Ghost Blitz, where, have you played that one, Alex? I
love Ghost Blitz. Love Ghost Blitz. And its sequel, Ghost Blitz 2, the Ghost Blitzening.
Okay, well good. This is right up your alley because I've played Ghost Blitz and thought it was fine. I liked it, but I think this completely replaces Ghost Blitz because it has that thinkiness with the reaction, but the components are awesome. I actually bought some new equipment. I did a playthrough of this, a multi-camera playthrough, bought some new equipment to get some really cool angles, and that's going to be coming out in April, right before the game comes out. The reactions and just watching us play this game, if you watch this, there's no way you won't laugh and smile and want to like at least play this game because it is hilarity fun, and it's coming out in April and it's Smirk and Laughter's first imprint of that publisher. So if you like speed reaction games at all, and if you like Ghost Blitz like you, absolutely got to check this out because I won't play Ghost Blitz again after having played this one.
Wow, a Ghost Blitz killer.
Yeah, that's what I think personally.
So it turned Ghost Blitz into a ghost.
Ooh,
spooky. Do you think Smirk and Laughter is trying to go head to head a little bit with North Star?
I don't know. I know of one other game they're publishing. I'm not sure if it's announced yet, but some of them they're not all going to be like super party games, but they're going to be more interaction, like that way. So I don't know if they're going to go straight head to head. I think they're just kind of taking the brand that they've built, and still sometimes, I mean, the game does have a little bit of take that, right? I mean, when you win the pistachio, you get to give the cards to someone. So like small elements of that, but they're more just kind of going to be more family level games, I would say.
You know what you say when you lose in that game? Aw, nuts. Anyway, very cool. So that's Not So Fast from Smirk and Laughter. Sean, what have you been playing?
I gotta say, those both sounded like really interesting games with really interesting play experiences. And I'm glad that I was here to listen
the entire time.
To listen to all of that and take from that.
A peek behind the curtain. Very fun, Sean.
Yeah. So, well, what I've played recently is a little game called Monster Wrangling, in which that monster is my child, and she's a monster. Did I mention she's a monster? Because she's a monster. No, actually, I got to finally play Twilight Imperium 4, a game that I know both of you are just dying to play.
Nope.
I gotta say, I'm not dying to play it, but I think I would give it a shot, which I think previous years I would say no, but lately I've been playing and reviewing like bigger, heavier games like Lisboa and Scythe and things like that, and playing Seventh Continent sessions that have lasted more than 7 hours without stopping, and so I wouldn't say it's a definite no, but I'm not like dying to play, but I'd give it a shot.
Well, I'll say this. So I've played Twilight Imperium 2nd edition. I played 3rd a bunch, and then 4th. And 4th is definitely a streamlined version of 3rd, but I don't want to give the impression that it's so streamlined. I mean, it's definitely all there. I mean, we're talking about saving maybe 10-15% of the game time just in the streamline process. So if people aren't familiar with Twilight Imperium and any of its incarnations, it is basically a ships on a map game. You are controlling the space empire, you have your home system, and you are trying to conquer all these other planets out around you. You're developing different technologies to help you do so. There's a politics side of it. There's a galactic senate, which everyone loves from the Star Wars prequels, but it's fun. It's really good. And what's nice, the way that they do this is there are just little changes they made that completely change how the game is played, but still make it very familiar to TI3. So for example, the game uses these strategy cards, which is, how do I put this? You draft a card at the beginning of a round, and you get a main action, and then everyone else can kind of take a secondary action. You see that in a lot of games. Well, one of those cards is the politics card, and in the past, you had to stop the game when someone used the main power to do the politics phase, and it just kind of, everyone's cranking along, going at a good pace, and then the game just grinds to a halt because now you have to vote on all these different laws and stuff. Now, the politics phase is just done at the very end of the round, and it just makes more sense. So that's one example of how it's kind of been streamlined. The other example is the faction sheets. So before, the faction sheets were just a bunch of art and cool stuff. It looked fine, but now there's a bunch of useful information on them, or much more useful information, including stats for all of your ships. So it's a lot easier to reference. You can also upgrade your ship so you can put cards in the spots on the player sheet, which makes a lot of sense. And that's the other thing too, is upgrading technology. There used to be this really complicated tech tree. Now it's a much simpler system where you have a deck of cards. There are some prerequisites on it, but overall it was definitely a streamlined experience, and it was great. I really liked it. I was kind of annoyed when I heard they were coming out with it because I've got TI3, I've kind of blinged it out quite a bit. It's super organized. I have all these accessories for it. And I was like, I don't want to have to buy another TI game. And after playing this, I said to myself, okay, I will never bring out TI3 because I will, knowing TI4 is out there, I'm not going to want to play my copy of TI3.
How long did it take?
Well, we played 4 players, and we played to 14 points. Normally you play to 10 points. We played to the longer 14 points, and we spent about 6 hours at 4 players.
That's not as bad as I had heard, even for the longer point count.
Yeah, no, it was pretty good. I mean, everyone had played TI at some point. That was my first time playing TI4. Everyone else had played TI4 before, but I'd played plenty of TI3 that it really wasn't. I mean, we just jumped into the game. I didn't have anyone teach me the rules, and I just kind of picked up as I went along. So it's not bad. And now I'm wondering, do I need to pick up TI4? Which makes me kind of sad.
You should just play your friends' copies.
Yeah. Have you ever listened to the podcast, Dan? Have you ever met me?
I know you have issues. It's okay. We all do.
I can't be someone else's Alex.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Oh no.
Oh, he went there.
Man. You know, I read somewhere on a thread that people don't appreciate all the negativity on this show, Sean Ramirez. So I will not participate in perpetuating that.
Okay.
I will take it. I am the saint of this show. I am a saint.
Here's what I say. If I can heap all the scorn on you, and you cut out any of the scorn you heap on me, we've at least eliminated by 50%. So I think that's...
Exactly.
I think that's solid.
Sean, I think you're a wonderful person and a wonderful parent, and that's all I have to say in this moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
To be fair, I think the balance of scorn heaping. Is that the right way to phrase it? It's probably like 70-30 in favor, like me heaping the scorn.
I think it would be like 85-15. Okay. I think is a good ratio for this show in general.
Well, math has never been your strong suit, Alex.
Wow. All right. Hey, I'm going to talk about a game. You all go with that?
Sure, that was Twilight Imperium 4 from Fantasy Flight Games.
Great. I'm going to talk about Pax Porfiriana.
Oh my goodness!
Which is I played it, Sean.
That's crazy.
And oddly enough, the same person who taught me taught you.
Yeah.
My monochromatic wolf buddy, Josh. By the way, Sean, you may or may not have missed this. You were here the whole time, so you missed me talking that we played Fog of Love and broke up. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Have you played that yet, by the way?
No, but my review copy did come in the mail this week, and I should be getting my first play of it in this weekend.
He has said that he absolutely would not play this one with Dawn, with his wife.
That's what I'm hearing.
And I'm curious how you'll be with Raquel. Are you playing this with Raquel, or are you going to play it with someone else?
That's the plan.
Oh, boy. Well, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I'm not talking about that, though. I'm talking about Pax Porfiriana, which is my first ever Phil Eklund game. Set in Mexico around the turn of the... basically, it's referring to the time right around before the 1910 revolution that overthrew Porfirio Diaz, the Mexican dictator. And you are basically playing as folks trying to make your way to becoming the leader of Mexico, the next leader of Mexico, either through U.S. intervention or Porfirio Diaz retires and passes it on to you, or there's anarchy and there's democratic elections, or there's martial law and you take over by military force. Those are 4 ways the game can end in sort of a topple victory. You do this by buying cards from a market row and then playing them in front of. You can send troops onto other people's buildings that they'll put out, because those are buildings that'll produce income. There's a ton going on, and I'm not going to be able to explain this all that well. What I will say is the play we had of this, there's some potential in the mechanic that it's cool that the game can end in these different ways, and you're going for different victories and trying to force what kind of regime is going on so that you can earn more or less income. It's interesting that you can play cards that would cause havoc on yourself to try and get yourself closer to a victory condition. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. What was a bummer about this game was, in the game, you can trigger a depression, which completely screws up the economy for everyone. And strategically, you might want to do it, but it's not a fun thing to do. And I had to trigger a depression, and it led to this grinding kind of experience with it. And it was frustrating. I don't like that there was a possibility in the game to do that. I understand the strategic options it opens up, but it was not a feel-good kind of game playing through this. However, the mechanics were interesting enough that I will try this again. For some reason, I mentioned this in the moment, this reminded me of my sort of not full plays, but sort of pseudo plays of Twilight Struggle, in that you're trying to get influence in certain areas, and cards are very conditional, or can be very conditional into certain areas. I enjoyed it well enough, but certainly the first play experience was pretty iffy on it. So that's Pax Porfiriana. Dan, have you played this one?
No, I have not.
Yeah, I don't know if this strikes me as it's not a Dan or Alex kind of game. We're more aligned in game taste than I think.
I was surprised when you first said what game you were talking about. I was like, wow, Alex is going on the deep end.
This is a 3.47 weight rating on BGG. It's certainly a heavy game, but not necessarily that long of a game. It didn't take us a ton of time to play, and I was kind of blown away because this is a very small game. Like, the box for this is not huge, given how hefty it is or heavy the gameplay is. It reminded me in a sense of Matai in that you sort of have this heavier thing in a smaller packet. So it was an interesting mechanical experience, and I'm excited to play it again at some point. Although this first play experience was pretty So that's Pax Porfiriana.
So let me clarify real quick. I have not actually played Pax Porfiriana. Josh taught me Pax Pamir at Dice Tower Con, and then that same Dice Tower Con, Brant from the Portal Gaming podcast, taught me Pax Renaissance. So what's nice, Alex, is this is, of those PAX games, this is the lightest of them. So I think Josh knew what he was doing there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he knows what he's up to. It was interesting. For folks who are skeptical of this kind of game and more aligned with me, I don't know. I don't know if I'd seek this one out, but don't turn it away if the opportunity comes up, I guess.
Very cool.
For me, for the last, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, I've been watching people publish pictures of rising sun from the eastern half of the United States, wondering when we're going to finally get ours, and finally the people out in the west side got them. So I finally got a chance to play the production copy of Rising Sun, designed by Eric Lang and Simon. Let's see, I'll do my best to do a live 1 minute Allegro overview of this. So Rising Sun is a 3 to 5 player game set in the feudal Japan time period where you're going to be trying to gain points by controlling different provinces, harvesting those provinces, and going to war in those provinces with other players. But you can also get points by losing wars because it has a very interesting blind bidding system with lots of negotiation where you can tell people what you're going to do and then backstab them and do something else. The game has awesome miniatures, has huge monsters that you can recruit that do all sorts of crazy things. And oh, by the way, there's this thing called honor. And as you're a jerk, it goes down. As you're good, it goes up, and it breaks all ties. This is an amazing area control negotiation game that I am calling Tammany Hall on steroids. Was that 1 minute? Was that 1 minute? Was that good?
That was, it was interesting. We started off with Dan King voice. We've had Dan King voice for most of this episode, and then Game Boy Geek voice came in very strong there.
Yeah, one take Dan. That's how it works. Although it's never one take. So I got a chance. Yeah, finally got a chance to play this a lot. And my review's coming out next week. By the way, before I start saying what I thought about it real quickly, for those of you that have not played it yet or you want to teach somebody, I just put up a rule school, which is my branded how to play video. So if you're looking to how to play it, just Google how to play Rising Sun and you'll see it. It will help you set up and play the game without having to read the rule book. So if you haven't played it yet, do that. But I love this game. I love negotiation. I love area control. This was one of those things where I'm not a big dudes on the map fan in general. So when I went to the CMON Expo last year, I went there specifically just to play this, not thinking I would like it, and I fell in love with it then just with one play, and then now I've played it many times, and I really love this game. It's awesome.
Dan, not to make a CMON comparison here, but Rising Sun or Godfather?
Rising Sun, no question for me.
Okay.
Yeah, the negotiation aspect is just so amazing, and the whole blind bidding system is just so cool. Have you played Tammany Hall?
I have not played Tammany Hall.
Okay. So yeah, I prefer this much more over the Godfather for sure.
So Alex, when you said not to make a CMON comparison, I was not expecting you to go with Godfather. I was expecting you to say Blood Rage.
No, I don't care enough about Blood Rage to make that comparison. I have not played that game since our review and have no intention of ever playing it again.
And in case you asked, I like Rising Sun even better than Blood Rage, actually.
Yeah, and I do too. So I got to play this this last weekend. My buddy Ellie had gotten his copy in, and so he, Raquel, and our other buddy Andy, we all got to play a 4-player game, and I was blown away. I think it was fantastic, and I've got to say that some of the shine for Blood Rage had kind of come off for me in the recent years, but this is it actually reminds me a lot of, and not necessarily in a derivative way, of the old Shogun that later became Samurai Swords. Is that right? It was an old Milton Bradley, part of their Game Master series like Axis and Allies, and it had the blind bidding for taking certain actions in combat, but it's much better, it's much more streamlined, it's much more of a modern game, and I really liked it. Alex, I am very curious what you're going to think about this because it has non-binding negotiation. And I know how big of a fan you are of non-binding negotiation.
Getting angry just thinking about it.
You've got 2 people here on this podcast, Alex, that love Nothing Personal. And then you've got you.
Yeah, that game's not my favorite.
It actually made me want to play Nothing Personal again, just because of how much.
Me too.
I brought it down after playing Rising Sun the other day. I brought down Tammany Hall and Nothing Personal side by side afterwards, and everyone was like, "We got to play these soon, just so we can play all these 3 like in a short time span, so we can all compare and contrast them even deeper." You know?
Yeah. No, I was hoping to get Nothing Personal to the table this last weekend after Blood Rage, and nope, after Rising Sun, I'm gonna keep doing that. Didn't happen, but yeah, no, I really enjoyed Rising Sun. Of course, the minis are amazing, but I think it's a bit of a richer play experience than you would get in Blood Rage. And in my mind, there is a connection there, even though the mechanics are very much different. But because it's Eric Lang, because it's got that same CMON treatment with the miniatures, I think that the comparisons are fair. And I get a similar feel in a very macro sense when I play the 2, but I prefer the mechanics in Rising Sun more. So
I would say the same thing.
Well, cool. Hopefully we can convince at some point Alex to play this game and maybe do a featured review since it is the new hotness.
You'll never get me.
You got to at least try it, Alex. It's awesome.
I'll probably try it at some point. I don't know. There's certainly enough copies floating around St. Louis. I'm sure if I needed to, I could get a play of this one in.
And don't let the non-binding negotiation make you not want to play it, because quite honestly, non-binding it doesn't mean you have to do non-binding. If you play with a group that is like, it's fine that you could still win the game by doing mostly deals. as long as you're good at negotiating in the first place.
Seriously, if I had to pick my most hated mechanic of any mechanic ever, non-binding negotiation would be my most hated mechanic. There's too many feel-bad moments with that one for me. And I get what you're saying. It's optional. You don't necessarily have to play with it, I guess. But, bad taste in my mouth.
Well, and I would say that it's not as mean as like a nothing personal. Like there's not as many ways and as many painful ways to stab someone in the back. I mean, certainly it's going to happen, but it's not as bad as nothing personal. Those feel bad moments I don't think are as extreme.
I would agree.
Nice try, guys.
So, well, all right. Well, the last game I'm going to talk about is Harvest. This is a TMG game, by the way. TMG is one of our sponsors, just for full disclosure there. Harvest is designed by Trey Chambers, and you may remember Trey from Argent the Consortium. And this is nothing like Argent the Consortium, except for the fact that they're both worker placement games. Argent is this big, sprawling worker placement game with all of these crazy powers and tons of stuff going on from our friends over at Level 99 Games. This is a much smaller box. It's a much smaller game. It's a much shorter game, but it packs quite a bit into this. It's reminiscent to me of Harbor, the other Tasty Minstrel game designed by Scott Alms in terms of its look. It uses kind of that same cartoony fantasy look that Harbor had. And it's a worker placement game where you are trying to gather crops. You're trying to plant them. You're trying to sow, I think is the term, where basically they grow, and then you're harvesting them. Hey, that's the name of the game, which is going to give you some points. All the while, you're building certain buildings to get different effects and different bonuses. There's also this cool initiative system where there are these 3 cards that are dealt out, and the cards have an initiative from, I think, 1 to 15 on them. And so the lower the number, the sooner you're going to go in the next turn. But there's also a power associated with that initiative, and they're all different on these 15 cards. And so the 15 card power is much more powerful than the 1 card power. So it's an interesting trade-off there, and it's a great way to get certain bonus actions. This was really cool. I actually got taught this by Seth Jaffe, who works for TMG, the designer of Eminent Domain and a bunch of other games. I actually got to hang out with him quite a bit this last weekend at Arizona Game Fair, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But back to Harvest, it was really cool. It was quick. We played 3 players. It was Seth, my buddy Ellie, and myself. It was about 45 minutes with a rules explanation, but there was a lot of meat to this game, and it was pretty tight. And I'm a fan of these agricultural style games where you're gathering crops and planting them and growing them and harvesting them, and with a bunch of special powers and abilities. And that's the thing too, is it had asymmetric powers to really spice things up. It was good. It was a lot of game packed into a little package, packed into a short playthrough that felt pretty fulfilling when all was said and done. So I'll actually be looking to get a copy of Harvest, and I encourage people to do the same. Have you guys seen this?
I have not played this one yet, but Sean, later on today, we can talk during the Kickstarter. There's actually Harvest is in one of the bundles from TMG.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I've seen it in the context of when I'm searching on Amazon to check our product page for one of our other games, which I won't discuss on this show.
For Harvest Dice.
Yep, that's the one. I'm not gonna. That one always seems to pop up first, so I'm a little bummed out by that sometimes. Anyway, that's the context in which I've seen it. I've not played it.
Fair enough. Well, it's definitely worth checking out. I think that this is a game that is right up both of your alleys. So I definitely encourage that. So that is Harvest from Tasty Minstrel Games, and I think that's going to do it for our recent plays. Alex, you got a scoop from our other buddy, Mike Fitzgerald.
Yeah, and as kind of mentioned, I guess not totally a scoop, because it was out there on a thread. I think Ralph Anderson may have made a mention of it on a thread, but that's okay. I'm going to call it a Dutchie first, because there is one game that has been synonymous with this podcast for a very, very, very long time. That's Baseball Highlights 2045. First mention, don't you even try, Dan King. You did it a year ago. You beat me to it. I listened back to that episode. I felt the shame and sting of not being able to say that first. But we have a first mention of a different kind, because, hey, there's a sequel in the works, folks. And here's myself and Mike talking earlier this week all about it. Well, we're joined for this news segment very briefly by my good friend, I'm proud to say, and noted game designer and designer of a game that probably gets mentioned the most on this show, Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention, Mike Fitzgerald. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, Alex. Good to talk with you always, and things happen pretty quick with what we're going to talk about, so it's like I thought, yeah, this is the time to let it out of the bag.
Yeah, and maybe let's not hesitate, because this is some hot news. Mike, what do you have to tell us?
Well, I have figured out how Football Highlights 2052 is going to work. So this is very exciting news. Now, it doesn't mean it's coming out tomorrow. It's in early stages, but I can briefly talk about it and maybe stir up some interest to people by May. I think I'll be looking for some testers to, take it through its paces. And I'm very excited about it.
Very good. So, how long have you been brewing an idea for a successor? Because Baseball Highlights, I think, had maybe surprise success. Surprise for a lot of people, not for me having played the game, but some amount of surprise success. How long had you been brewing, turning this concept or taking this system and applying it to other sports?
Other sports, I have not been thinking about that very long. My first look at it, I looked closely maybe a few months after Baseball Highlights came out, and there was a lot of interest in it, and I said, well, maybe we should look at this. And I just could not find a way to do it. What I will not do is I will not do the same game. So, and each sport's very different. And, even though I'm abstracting it, obviously, I'm trying to capture something special about that sport. With baseball, it's an individual sport. So there's excitement in players, and players who can perform different things. Football, although there certainly are a lot of exciting players, it's much more of a team sport than it is individual performances. So to me, and because of the way the game progresses, I just couldn't figure out a way to, make a short tactical card game, which is what I really wanted to do. That part I was willing to do again, but it had to play in a whole different way. And then so many people have asked me, over the last couple of years, when are you going to do football? When are you going to do hockey? When are you going to do this? So I thought I'd look at it again, and I looked at it very hard and tried a couple of ideas. I tried something. My first idea turns out to be the one I'm going with. But during the development of that, I went back to a deck builder just to see how it would work. And it just doesn't the way that I want it to. So this is a card drafting game. The backstory, the flavor, what's on the cards, exactly what they represent, I really don't know yet. But right now, it's in late alpha, I guess I'd call it, because we're working out how the mechanics work, and we have prototype cards that aren't named yet or aren't really done much with. But you're drafting your playbook, your plays for the game, and you'll draft them all at once before the game starts, and then you'll play the game. And the game will take about 35, 40 minutes. Each half's about 20 minutes. You're just playing 10 cards, so there is more thought in there's a lot of thought in the play. The hand is growing the way it plays right now. You start with 4 cards, play one, draw a card, play one, draw a card. You play 10 cards a half. And you can do some substitution and stuff during the game. The things I brought over from football were touchdowns. They give you 7 points. Field goals give you 3 points. And safeties give you 2 points. There is no kicking game beyond that. There's no kickoffs. There's no returns. There's nothing. Think of college overtime in concept, but a little more to it. So each player has a 50-yard field that's on the same bigger field. One's on the right-hand side, and his yardage goes 50 to the end zone. The other person's on the other side of the field, and his yardage closest to him goes 50 to the end zone. And every time, the cards are similar to Baseball Highlights in that they have things that will affect the other person's situation and your situation all at once. And the evaluation of how they work together so far is proven to be pretty strategic and a lot of good strategy. I mean, it's tactical and strategic, like Baseball Highlights. The drafting is really interesting because you're going to know what the other player has to some degree. You're drafting 2 cards at a time. You'll each get 15. So the draft goes pretty quickly. You got 1 left over at the end, which you can throw away and pick 2 from the deck and keep 1, or you can keep that last card. and then you go at it with your opponent. And there's 4 downs to get a touchdown. What's different is if you completed your 4th play in that drive and you don't score, you can attempt a field goal at that point. So it's kind of like 4.5 downs, I guess. And the scores, the first full game we played a couple of weeks ago, the score was 38-33. And I thought that was pretty interesting because when the Super Bowl happened, it was only 3 points difference from the Super Bowl score.
Not too far at all, yeah.
And at least I accomplished getting a lot of points in a little card play. Now, there's some things, there you can play very defensively, and there can be very defensive games based on what cards are available in the draft. You can draft up to 8 people at once. The deck is 195 plays, and you're looking at 30 for each game. So you can draft with 8 people, and you still have a lot of cards left over because you're only using 120. So I think this will be pretty interesting in tournaments. There could be a tournament rule where you're only playing a half. You'll still score quite a bit and be interesting. The speed play up a little bit. I'm not sure about all that. Players are going to tell us that a lot in what works. But I'm really excited to have a different sport. To me, it feels like football, even though it's not. It's not a simulation at all. And it feels very different from baseball highlights so far. So that's why I'm excited. So I do expect it out in 2019. There'll be more details announced in April about the game.
I was gonna ask you about the timeline for something like this because, as you mentioned, it's in late alpha, so we're still a long ways away from this being a reality. But even hearing about this obviously has me incredibly excited. So Mike, what is the timeline for something like this, and how do you go about testing it, just for folks to get kind of an inside perspective?
Sure. Well, I'm in high gear with it now, so it's being tested all the time. I have Ralph Anderson, who worked with me very closely in baseball highlights, is testing. Some other people will be testing. A few people will get a look at this stage that I trust, and I will find out a lot of early information, making sure I'm on the right track. By April, I will be into beta. And then the only real thing that's left, besides some tweaking, will be the background, fleshing out what the cards are, are players involved or plays. There might be there could be a team concept where the team alters your plays a little bit, or stars that could alter your plays a little bit. There's a lot of stuff we've been discussing, but the heart of the game is that card play, and that's what I'm excited about now. So I really don't think it'll take much time. If I would expect by the summer I will have a finished game. So then it's a matter, if it's with Eagle Griffin, nothing's been officially signed yet, but the likelihood is pretty strong it will be. That would be a Kickstarter situation. So Kickstarter could happen late in 2018, let's say, or, because we like to get the game done before we kickstart, and then we like to have videos and, playthroughs and really give people a chance to see what it's like when they're in that process.
Very good, Mike. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Breaking news, you heard it here first. Football Highlights 2052 is very much a reality. Keep an eye for it because I'm sure as more news of it comes out, we will be talking quite a bit about it on the show. But that's the first taste for now. Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. And by the way, the title is up for changing. Everything's up for changing. But right now, that's the year, 2052. Okay.
Fair enough. Thanks, Mike.
Yep, thank you.
All right, Alex. Well, thanks for picking up that scoop, although, like we said, not really a scoop. But I guess because you're no longer in the news biz, your skills are fading.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'm taking more abuse this episode. Just keep it on, Sean. I know all the pain in your life. I can absorb it. I
guess we could say he's no longer a free agent.
Oh,
I'm gonna need a pinch hitter for this episode.
All right. Well, that's gonna do it for our look at the news. Alex, do you consider yourself a liar?
Never.
Well, then never mind, Alex. I guess we won't talk about Spoils of War from Arcane Wonders, which incorporates a little bit of Liar's Dice into a very rich Viking theme where you're trying to collect a bunch of plunder from your victims. Alex, you sure I can't convince you to maybe lie a little bit?
No, I never lie.
Well, cool. Let's totally not play Spoils of War together. No, I think this game is fantastic, Alex. You've had a chance to play this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this game's awesome. And that's not a lie, Sean. I would never lie about that.
Well, check out Spoils of War over at arcanewonders.com. They've got a whole host of other amazing titles, including all of the Dice Tower Essentials line.
You can learn more about Spoils of War at arcanewonders.com. This week, it's Feldmas in February. Well, not exactly. It's a Feldian title set in space, where you're building gyrodynes and exploring the stars. Does this game launch into success? We'll tell you. It's Pulsar 2849.
Pulsar 2849 is published by CGE, Czech Games Editions, designed by Vladimir Suki, with art by Soren Medding. And this is a point salad game that's played out over 8 rounds, and you are trying to harvest the power from these pulsar stars by building these giant rings called gyrodynes around them. And by building those, you're going to be able to harvest some points as well, because like we said, this is a point salad. This is also a dice drafting game. Every round, you're going to roll a bunch of dice, and every player is going to get to draft 2 dice. The dice, these are just regular D6s, 1 through 6, and the pips on them are going to determine what you can do. So you can use them to take your explorer ship and go flying around the galaxy, which is going to give you access to some of these pulsars that you'll eventually need to harness their power. You can also go discover systems, get certain bonuses, and be able to claim worlds in these systems, which are going to be worth a lot of points at the end of the game. You can use the dice to build these transmitter arrays, which are going to potentially give you some immediate bonuses or some ongoing bonuses. You can use them to go gain technology. There's this cool system where every turn, more and more technology becomes available. Maybe it gives you some way to manipulate dice in certain situations. Maybe it gives you points for doing certain things in the game, or maybe some end game scoring points towards the later rounds. And then you can also use the dice to purchase the gyrodynes and then to eventually turn on those gyrodynes to start harvesting those points. At the end of a round, you're going to be scoring points for any of your harvested gyrodynes, any points that you might get for some of your completed transmitter arrays, and a bunch of other things that might happen that can give you points every round. And then at the end of the game, there's a lot of points to be had. There's some special objectives, and if you're able to meet those, and then spend some of these energy cubes to give you bonus points for completing certain objectives. Lots of stuff going on here. Lots of stuff I haven't even talked about in this rules overview that we should hopefully tease out in our review. But that is a very brief explanation of how to play Pulsar 2849. Of course, most points is the winner. So, Dan, let's start with you, buddy.
Yes, sir.
What are your initial thoughts on Pulsar 2849?
Well, I typically like dice drafting games. I'm not usually typically huge into space themes, but I gotta say, this does the dice drafting so well. There's so many different ways that you can go with the strategies, and there's so many different ways to make the game replayable that overall I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Alex?
A lot of what Dan said. I like dice drafting games. I think last time you were on, Dan, Grand Austria Hotel and some of the comparisons there came up. And yeah, I dig that. I dig those kinds of titles. Not necessarily, what's that one? Voyages of Marco Polo. Don't dig that one so much. But it does some really interesting things with dice are inherently more valuable if they're higher valued, but they can mess you up on a bunch of different tracks. There's multiple paths to victory. There's cool combos. You feel clever in this. And it's a Frankenfeld, or kind of a Frankenfeld, I guess, is how we've described things like La Granja in the past. But it's a Feld-esque title that feels true to that and actually succeeds in that. I don't feel necessarily captured by the theme, but the gameplay here is so unbelievably solid that it keeps me coming back for more. So I'm a fan of this one, at least on an initial thought.
So just a brief point of order, Alex. Voyages Marco Polo, you're not drafting the dice. It's just dice placement.
Whatever.
But similarly, a game like El Gaucho was dice drafting.
Yes, I like that one a lot, yeah.
Which I think we made a comparison with that in like Grand Austria Hotel when we reviewed that with Dan a while back. Yeah, there's a lot to like about this game. So I wouldn't call this a Frankenfeld. I think we called La Granja a Frankenfeld because it actually like had different parts of very specific parts of other Feld games. I've used the term a faux Feld before. Yeah. Here's the thing. Point salad is not unique to Feld, but it is something that he is known for, and I think, in my opinion, that he excels at. And so I think there's a natural comparison to Feld games. But I think that this does a lot of interesting things on its own. I like this quite a bit. I don't think that's going to surprise anybody, but I will say that I do have a complaint, which I'll kind of tease out in a little bit, that's going to keep this from being amazing in my mind. There was lots to like about this. I love the dice drafting, which adds some time to a game, which is okay. I think for my money, I would have rather spent more time performing the actions, if that makes sense. And I'll kind of tease that out. I've said tease out like 4 times this episode. But I like this quite a bit. I think it's solid. I think one of your favorite things, Alex, is multiple paths to victory. And I think this game absolutely has that. And it's a solid game. And like Dan, you mentioned, there's tons of variability in this game. There's this modular setup that affects a bunch of different things. It's fantastic. It is really solid. So, Alex, did you have a chance to go over the rulebook?
Yeah, Sean, I did have a chance to read the rulebook because I had to help teach this game in a situation which, as I've been out here, is a more and more common occurrence. I will say I got some help in learning this game, not just from the rulebook, but also from the rules video done by Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules, which was a pretty nice overview and got you a really good sense of how to do things. It laid things out pretty well. You had to dig a little bit for some of the 2-player changes. They were sort of towards the back, and I tend to like those as they're filtered in during setup. But having that all in a decent place, I was able to learn this game well enough and look things up as I needed to. They have a nice little technology reference sheet which helps explain some of the iconography on there in case you need help decoding different things. So no, I found it to be pretty usable.
And Dan, I know you've got a video of this up on your channel, so I know you read the rulebook. Any thoughts?
Yeah, CGE usually does. They're the leading edge of rulebooks. They typically do them excellently. This one is no different. It's probably one of the better rulebooks I've read, period. A lot of times, actually most of the time, I actually read a rulebook for the first time. I don't even have the game in front of me. I just read the rulebook and I can picture everything in my brain. And this rulebook, I read it the first time and I felt like I understood everything. The layout, the text size, the pictures, the examples. This is probably one of the best rulebooks I've read in a while.
Yeah, I'd agree. I agree with the general sentiment that CG does a fantastic job. And I know a big part of that is Paul does a lot of the rules revisions. And it's a solid rule book. And like you, Alex, I also I listened. I didn't get to watch, but I listened to Paul's rules overview as I was driving to Empire, and pretty much from listening to it without having seen anything, and then from just doing a quick skim of the rules, I had to teach out pretty quickly. And that's the interesting thing is it's actually a pretty quick teach. It is a terrible setup. There's so much to set up. And I think whenever you have a bunch of variability with modular stuff to set up, it's going to take a little bit longer. And I think it looks pretty intimidating on the table because it's a pretty big table hog. There's just so much stuff out there. But once you get into the rules teach, it's really not that bad. I mean, it's not hard to kind of grok the concepts in this game. At least I didn't think so. And the players I played with didn't seem to have an issue with that. So let's talk a little about the art, the graphic design, components, things like that.
I think the art's fine. I don't think it's a detriment to the game. I also don't think it's something that's going to sell the game. Same with the components. I mean, these days, people are putting out great games with great components. And again, this one, solid components. It's what I would expect from a major publisher these days. Again, nothing to detriment it or nothing to say it's going to push it over the edge. The art, when we talk about graphic design, the game has a lot of iconography. And I think it does a pretty good job of keeping consistent the iconography. And once you learn sort of what this means, and you see it in other places and stuff. So I think they've done a good job with that for sure.
I had some struggles with iconography from time to time. I do, as mentioned, like how the rulebook laid it out and explained things. Some of it wasn't 100% clear, but there's a lot of stuff they're trying to explain and a lot of concepts they're trying to explain through icons. So certainly not easy. And I'd agree with you. It's not a standout portion of this, right? It's the art isn't going to sell the game. The game's going to sell the game, but it also doesn't hold it back. And I've seen situations where art can hold a game back. And I think the whole production on this is perfectly fine for what it needs to be. It doesn't necessarily immerse me one way or the other, but it also doesn't keep me from playing it, which is, I think, always a good compliment to a graphic design or art of a game. If it doesn't stop you from wanting to play a game, like, say, for instance, the box cover of Werewords, which has stopped me from actually buying that game.
Oh my gosh, really? You realize they're coming out with a deluxe edition that they have redone all the art.
I know, and I'll probably end up backing it because I love that game, and I have not bought it single-handedly because of the box cover. Hey, there's a discussion topic on. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Dan on camera is showing me an early. Yeah, I know, Dan. You're very important. We understand.
I just wanted you to say it was okay. Anyway, so back to what you were saying about the icons. Yes, there are a lot of them. Yes, it can be a bit of a hurdle. But again, going back to that rule book, they have a separate book for all of the headquarters. It has all of the icons there. So yes, there's a lot of icons, but there's easy ways to figure them out too.
Yeah, and I think what's nice is they do a good job. It is consistent. So like if a certain thing gives you an immediate effect, it has a certain color coding and symbol. If it gives you an ongoing effect, same thing. If it's endgame scoring, same thing. If it happens during production, same thing. So I think it does a good job in that sense. And then you mentioned real quick the headquarters, Dan. I didn't really talk about that in the rules explanation, but there's a separate board that's basically a variant. You can add this in where it's kind of well, tech tree is the wrong word because there's a whole separate technology, but you're building these special projects that give you certain bonuses and let you do these things called gate runs to score points. And I've played the game both with and without it. I think that I will choose to play with it. And I will probably teach with it because I don't think it adds that much more complexity, but it definitely adds a little bit more as far as what you can do in the game and different ways to use your dice. Did you use the project boards, Alex?
I did for one of my plays, and I did not for another one of my plays. So I've kind of played with both.
Okay, yeah. I like it. What do you think, Dan? Would you prefer to play with it or without it?
Yeah, definitely with it. If you're a gamer, you could probably start with it first game.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the case. But yeah, I think as far as the art goes, it's very competent. I think it gets the job done. It doesn't set it apart. But the box art I think is really cool. I think it looks really nice. But as far as you've got like the art on the transmitter arrays. You've got it's hard to say. I mean, really, it's just a bunch of icons. And I think, like we've talked about, it pretty much does a good job of differentiating and being consistent with that iconography. So.
Yeah, the only problem I had with the art or iconography was the score track goes around the board, and it's dark because it's space, and there's these little lines, and there's only numbers every 5. It's really hard to see those numbers, even every 5. They should have really put numbers in like a different grayish for every individual number, because the score track was the only piece of the production that I had trouble with.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had that same thought during some of my plays. And I will say, as far as the rest of the production goes, I do think it's a solid production. And I find it interesting that your main board is a circle, and then all of the other pieces are designed to kind of fit up against the circle. They have the bottom arc of each other board is curved so that it kind of fits onto the circle, which I thought was cool. It's a very, very different layout design, and I think it might set it apart as far as the table presence goes.
Sean, what do you think about gameplay with this one?
So, okay, point salads, typically love them. I love dice drafting. I love this idea of you have these 2 dice and you pick your actions based on what you are. There's a little bit of mitigation. We didn't talk in the rules, but there are these +1, -1 chits you can get. There's also a +2 chit you can get. And these numbers that you're using have to be exact. So, for example, if I want to take a transmitter array that requires a 4, my 5 is not going to get the job done. It has to be a 4. So I need that +1, -1. So I like that. I like things like that. But my main issue with the game was I couldn't do as much as I wanted to do. And let me add some context there. I want that in games, right? You don't want to feel like you can do everything. And you want to feel tight, and you want to feel like, oh man, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that, but I can't. I've got to focus. And so some comparisons in my mind were games like Castles of Burgundy. Castles of Burgundy, where you have 2 dice, and that's pretty much it. But what's cool about Castles of Burgundy is there's so many of these bonus actions that you're able to kind of combo together so that these 2 dice, instead of just being 2 actions, might turn into 3, 4, 5 actions. That's pretty cool. And there are some ways to do this in this game. We didn't talk about your potential 3rd die in a turn. There's a red die that you're able to use, but you're only ever able to use a red die once per turn. So you can have a 3rd action, and there are sometimes bonus effects, but I never had like a satisfying feeling of being able to necessarily create these cool combos. I mean, sometimes one die would lead me to do something with the other die, but it wasn't as fulfilling as some other games, even where those other games feel really tight and like I can't do as much as I want to. It was almost like I wanted this game to go longer, but I think that you can't do that with dice drafting because that whole dice drafting phase adds a lot of time to a game, as opposed to just you roll 2 dice and what you get is what you get, like Castles of Burgundy does, for example. So not to say that I don't like this game. I like it quite a bit, but I didn't feel like I was able to do enough, even though that's kind of the point.
I didn't get that feeling.
Okay.
I didn't get that feeling at all because I think there are enough satisfying actions. There are certainly restraints on the game to keep you from going too crazy with combos, right? You can only have 1 red die action per turn. So it's trying to hamstring you a little bit and keep you back from going too nuts, which I think is needed. It makes sure that there are legitimate paths to victory by ensuring that you're limited in what you can do. And hey, there's so many options anyway. You're not going to be able to do everything anyway. You can try and chain actions. You can try and go more for technologies. You can try and work on transmitters. And ultimately, you're working towards a divergent set of goals. Dice can be used in so many different ways in this game, but it feels satisfying. It doesn't feel overwhelming. And certainly this kind of game could feel overwhelming. I like a lot of what this does, Sean, and I don't feel that constraint. I feel like I'm exploring and building into my own strategy. I don't feel limited by this, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know, Dan, do you feel the same way?
I agree with Alex in this one. I do. I could see where Sean's coming from because, it feels tight, tighter than games than mostly I like. But Alex, to chime on what you said, I think part of it also is when you're drafting the dice in this game, you're drafting them, right, in a serpentine style. You're not sure what your second dice is going to get unless you're that one player that's doing it twice in a row. But then you don't take your actions until it becomes your turn in turn order. So there's a lot of unknown as to what you're going to do. And if you can have bonus die after bonus die after bonus die, there's already way too much to think about during the dice drafting period that knowing that you could chain together more and more actions it's already super thinky and brain burnery. Like to add more would almost make it too much so in that regard. So and if you want to do a lot of bonus actions, then focus on the transmitter strategy, right? Where you can get a ton of bonus dice throughout the game. I didn't feel like that way, but I can see how someone would definitely say that because, if you don't get any bonus dice, what is it? Is it 8 rounds or 6 rounds? I can't remember off the top of my head.
8-round game.
Yeah. So you're getting 16 turns if you don't get any bonus dice, right? So because you're doing about 2 dice per turn. So yeah, I mean, that part of it did feel a little bit similar actually to Grand Austria, where that's another dice drafting game where I do feel like, man, I can't get enough done, but to a point that I like it, like to the point that like it does feel tight. Everything does matter. Every decision you make matters.
Right. And so just for my perspective, like you said, in Grand Austria Hotel, it does have that same tightness, but for whatever reason, I feel a little bit more fulfilled by Gach, G-A-H, Grand Austria Hotel, than I do with Pulsar. By the way, Gach is a Klingon dish. It's a bunch of live worms that the Klingons eat. Anyway, that's our little Star Trek aside for the episode. But when I look at a game like Castles of Burgundy, again, you don't have dice drafting Castles of Burgundy, which saves on time. But what you do have is you have 25 rounds. You have 5 turns, 5 rounds. So you have 25 times 2 dice. You've got 50 actions plus all of the kind of bonus actions. So that's the sense I'm thinking of. Both these games kind of play in a similar amount of time, but of course it doesn't have the dice drafting. So in Pulsar, the dice drafting isn't just some throwaway round. It's not like, oh, I'm going to pick this die, you pick this die, great, whatever. There is a very important game mechanic within the dice drafting. There are these 2 tracks. One's an initiative track, one is I think it's called the engineering track. And basically, as you take dice, you have to choose to move up or down on one of these tracks based on which dice you take. So after you roll the 9 dice in a 4-player game, you have to figure out which is the median die. Basically, of these 9 dice, which is the 5th die, the one in the middle, and then based on the weight of die to the left or the right of the median die value. It sounds crazy, but it's easy once you figure it out. That determines which way this little marker shifts left or right. So let's say that the median die is a 4, and then it shifts to the left. So that means now if I take a 4, 5, or 6, I have to move one of my tracks up a certain certain number of spaces. So if I take a 4, I move up 1. A 5, I move up 2, etc. So this is important because if you're moving yourself on the initiative track, it's going to determine your turn order for the next round, which is going to determine when you can pick dice and do certain things, be the first to claim certain technologies, etc. But also at the end of the game, you're going to score points for being higher in initiative. So that's definitely important. The engineering track is important because at the end of every round, you're going to get these engineering cubes based on where you are on that track. And these engineering cubes can be spent to give you red dice if you don't have other ways to access them, or they could be spent, like I said, to kind of amplify the bonuses you get from some of the end game objectives. So both tracks are very important. So I don't want to say, oh, the dice drafting is just what it is. I mean, it's dice drafting plus, right? It's not just a mechanic you're doing for the sake of the mechanic. It's this really cool, really tense pair of tracks that I think does set this apart from some of the other games that I might compare this to. And I really like that aspect of the game. So real quick, what play counts did you guys get in this?
I've done all of them.
I played it at 2 and 4.
Okay. So for me, I think the sweet spot is 3. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, 2 and 3 feels very different. So I think that's apples to oranges. I definitely like 3 better than 4. 4, it starts to get kind of long for what it is, in my opinion. 3 is excellent and 2 is excellent. I love the 2 is so good because you both get 2 of the ships. You're getting 2 dice, but the 2 is also much more open because there's 3 dice left over at the end versus only 1 die left over at the end with 3 or 4 players. What that means is you're getting more choices and you're going to be able to get more of the dice that you think you're going to get with 2 players. So 2 is a much more open feeling, less tight, which I guess some people might not like, but I still felt like it's tight enough that it's still very good.
Yeah, I don't know that I was particularly crazy about it at 2. I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine, but I don't know that if I'm looking for a 2-player experience, I would think to bring down Pulsar. I think I agree with you at 4 that it does seem to get a little bit long. You've got that same problem that you had in Grand Osprey Hotel because you're snake drafting the dice. And so you're the first player, you don't even pay attention to what's happening on that dice board because the die you want's probably not going to be there.
But it's not nearly as bad because you're not taking the action immediately.
Right. True. So yeah, I think 3 is really excellent. I really enjoyed my 3-player plays, and I would be, if I've got 3 players, this could definitely be something that I think to bring out.
And I would say with 4, if you had 4 people that already knew the game, absolutely great. But when I played it with 4, 2 of the players had not played before, so that slowed things way down. But I think if you play with 4 people that know what they're doing, it would still be great.
Did you guys suffer any AP in this game?
Oh yeah, it can't. Well, yes, more than normal. Typically, it's not huge in my play groups, but this is one that can definitely bring that out. It's definitely got that avenue.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of options, right? I mean, a single die can be used to get a +1, -1 marker. It can be used to move your ship around. It can be used to get a technology. If you have player boards, it can be used on your player board. It can be used for a transmitter. It can be, I mean, there are a lot of possibilities for, it can be used to buy a gyrodyne, install a gyrodyne. Like, all of these different things are possibilities for any of these dice. And it wasn't as overwhelming as I think it could have been, but definitely had some moments where things ground to a halt, no doubt.
Yeah, in fact, I feel like there were times where I suffered some AP more so than I normally would with a game of this weight. And other players, I saw that too. But still, I think it's a pretty enjoyable play experience.
Thematically, does this one succeed, Sean?
Ish? Yeah, I think so. I mean, you're flying around in your little ship through all these different warp gates, and you're finding planets. My only issue is that you're building these gyrodynes when clearly anyone that knows anything about astrophysics and such knows that you should be building Dyson spheres to really capture the full power. I'm just saying, it's a better thing that you're doing. Anyway, yeah, ish. This is mostly thematic, I think.
For me, for the theme, I feel the same way as I did about the artwork. It for me, it wasn't huge. It wasn't something that's going to make me play the game, but it's also not to the point where it's going to push me away from the game. For me, it was just a neutral point.
The biggest part where I connected with the theme was this idea of exploration, right? This idea that you're flying onto these planets and discovering something, and it flips over, and who knows what's going to be over there. It could be something really cool. It could be something not so useful. But this I did get a sense, oddly enough, of kind of journeying through space in a cool way, and it did, oddly enough, kind of click thematically. It is not a very thematic game, I wouldn't say. I mean, it's not athematic, but it's not it's not intended to be narrative driven, right? It's a point salad game at its core. But more so than a lot of point salad games, I felt connected to this, sort of like how I felt with Aquasphere, oddly enough, where I felt pretty connected to that one thematically, even though a lot of people don't necessarily like that one as far as Felds go. I do. So this one, I felt some connection to the theme, and more so than I was maybe expecting.
Yeah, when you flip that over and you do the exploration, though, it's like, oh, cool, I can get this.
Yeah.
Or I can just decide not to and pull this other token over here and get this other bonus instead, right? So it kind of disconnected it right there. But and that flipping part actually was the most fiddly part of the entire game. Teaching people about the barren planets versus the blue planets, when can you put here, when you can put there, was actually the fiddliest part of the game that I wish they had streamlined a little bit more. But back to thematics.
So the guild weighed in a little bit here. Chad Jacobson said, played Pulsar a couple of times so far, and I really enjoyed it. As you suggested, it is Feldian, but my group almost didn't like the restrictiveness at first. You only get 2 actions each round, so it's imperative you get the third dice as often as possible. Love the decisions that are forced from choosing die and movements on the track. It also seems like a reverse Voyages of Marco Polo, in that if you're fairly inexperienced at the game, traveling seems the much better way to go. But I think the right board setup and some experience can warrant a heavy Gyrodyne strategy. All in all, I think this one tracks fairly high for me for 2017. I'd give it a high 4. It loses a point for some pretty bland graphic design. Interesting comparison with Voyages of Marco Polo. I agree. Traveling in that game is super hard if you don't know how to do it effectively. And then once you've played a couple games, and it definitely creates a barrier for newer players, or at least a separation between experienced and inexperienced players. But yeah, traveling in Pulsar is pretty straightforward, and I think is worth a good amount of points. And I think he's right. It's a good strategy for newer players to the game. What was your guys' preferred strategy?
I like the transmitters.
Yeah.
Because you get those bonus dice, so you can do the bonus dice so much more often, and you're getting stuff now and stuff later. Those helped with engines, where it's like, hey, this transmitter gets me an engineering cube, and this other transmitter allows me to turn an engineering cube for points at the end of every round. So there was some engine building there as well, plus the extra actions. That was my favorite.
Interesting, because that's the one I couldn't quite get to work, and I tried, and part of the problem was the one game I was really trying to go transmitter heavy. There wasn't really any incentive in terms of the end game points or some of the technology, but I was just like, oh, I want to try the transmitter strategy. So what I wish I could have gotten or done better was the Pulsar strategy, where you've got a bunch of these things that are just constantly recurring points every round. I mean, that's something that I think really, really speaks to me. But Alex, like I said before, you love this multiple paths to victory, and I think this does it well.
Yeah, no, and I've done well with a heavy Gyrodyne strategy. I've done well with a heavy travel strategy. I had one game of this where I hit literally every planet, and that felt very, very satisfying, even though I didn't win. So heavy Gyrodyne was also pretty satisfying. I like this idea of building up an engine early that's going to pay you out. The earlier you can get that thing going, the more and more and more that thing's going to pay you. I hit in the 2-player game this 220 points, which felt like a ton in this. Wow. Yeah, that was a heck of a game. Those scores I think are not typical for say 3 or 4 players, but and I think that had to do with the tightness that you guys were talking about different player counts. But no, I think there's plenty of ways to go. Transmitters are lovely too. They can help get you access to those extra dice, and if you have good position on the engineering track, you can convert those into points pretty well. So there's a decent amount going on, and I like the sandbox that you can play in, and I like that there's end game goals that might drive you in different directions. There's technology that might drive you in different directions, and you don't have to decide immediately in the game what you want to do. You can kind of pick as you go along and get better at what you're going for. So I don't know. I like the multiple paths to victory, and I think this does this very, very, very well.
Well, let's talk about some final thoughts. I'll just go first. This is a game that I think I would typically like, and I do like this. I did have some issues. It wasn't as fulfilling at the end for me as some other games of this weight and of this style, but that's not to say that I didn't enjoy these plays, and not to say that I'm not actually eager to play more games of this, because I do want to try improving on some of these strategies. And so I suspect that this will come out, especially kind of like you mentioned, Dan, where if you've got a group that already knows how to play, and we probably have about 7 or 8 that have played this at Empire, so that'll be easy enough to just say, okay, hey, let's break this out, and everyone knows how to lend a hand in setup and breakdown, so that's all fine. But okay, bottom line, I'm going to give this a 4. Here at the Dukes of Dice, we rate things on a 6-point scale. A 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. A 6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. So for me, this is a good game, worth playing, just not all the time belongs in the Duchy. So definitely want to have access to this game. I'm definitely looking forward to more plays of this, but that restrictiveness that feeling of not quite fulfilled keeps it from getting to that 5. I think there's some little tweak that could have made this a 5 in my mind, but for whatever reason, it's not there. But it's definitely worth checking out, and I'm definitely interested in playing this some more.
I like this a little better than you did, Sean. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 5. A great game. We'll rarely turn down a play of it. I think what's going to keep this thing from getting to the table as much as it could is the setup and breakdown of it, and is the amount of table space you need. It certainly has to be in the right situation, but I think it's very well designed. I think it does dice drafting incredibly well, and I think it succeeds as a point salad with multiple paths to victory. I have a lot of fun playing this, and I'm excited to explore this one more. I'm not sure how many times I'll play it in the next year, but I don't think that's going to hurt the game's standing in my mind. I think this is, if you're looking for a good dice drafter for your collection, or a good Feld-esque title, if those are kinds of games you like, I recommend this one strongly, actually. I'd give this one a 5. A great game. We'll rarely turn on a play of it, is my thoughts, for sure.
Cool. For me, I love the dice drafting aspect. I love how smaller dice are typically weaker than other dice, but yet they give you initiatives for turn order and or engineering cubes that you can turn in for extra bonus actions or end game points. The multitude of choices. There's always something good to do. Even if someone takes what you wanted to do, you get those transmitters with the engine building we talked about and getting bonus die, the headquarters, even more decisions, the end game goal tiles. The replayability of this is off the charts. Now, up until this point, I had Grand Austria Hotel as my favorite dice drafting game. Well, one of the last times I've played this before this review, I taught 2 new people. We finished it, and then we immediately played Grand Austria Hotel, which I hadn't played in a while, because even though it was my favorite dice drafting game, and we played it back to back. And I gotta say, after that, this game has now become my favorite Euro dice drafting game. And if I had reviewed this game before the end of last year, it would have made my top 10 of the year last year. That's how much I like this. So I'm giving it a 5. A great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it. Sean's talking about having things not being as fulfilling. For me, I thought all of those reasons, this game was very fulfilling as playing it.
Can we get a sax solo?
It's in the closet right now, man. I can't just,
Can't just do that. No, I get it. Yeah, big celebrity. Can't just do it. Can't just do it on demand. I understand.
Well, why don't you just bring up my review? I did a sax serenade.
Okay, fair enough. What'd you play? just not to spoil it for folks.
Oh gosh, who knows? I just do little improvisations that are like 4 bars or so.
Was it a Star Wars theme? What are we talking about here?
No, I'll get sued. What are you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
What you talking about, Alex?
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Pulsar 2849. A 4 from Sean, a 5 from Alex, and a 5 from Dan.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, next up in our ongoing voyage of episodes Alex wasn't a part of, in our Dukes Double Take, episode 131, Kanagawa, where Sean and Dan reviewed Kanagawa. At the time, Sean, you gave this one a 5. You would start off as a 4, but as you were talking about it, talked yourself into a 5. And Dan, you were right there with a 5 from the get-go. Absolutely solid 5. I did make a cameo appearance on this episode, probably my shortest ever appearance on the Dukes of Dice, because Sean called me right before I was about to go snorkeling, and that was fun. So, guys, have you played this one in the year since?
Yeah, I have. Now, granted, with what I do, I very rarely actually get to play older games that I've already reviewed, even if I love them. But I did. I have played it. I actually am bringing it to a game night that there's going to be some artists there tomorrow night. I'm bringing Junk Art, I'm bringing Pastiche, and I'm bringing Kanagawa, because there's going to be some full-time artists there, so I want to turn them onto that. So, yes, I still love the game, and I gave it a 5, and when I look at that language, I still think it's a great game, and I still would rarely turn down and play with it. You walk into my game room, there's, I don't know, maybe 300 something games, not that many here, but if anyone pulls that game out and brings it to me and goes, do you want to play this? I'll never bat an eye. Absolutely. Let's play it.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it at a 5 as well. I was I was thinking about taking it down to a 4, but then just now I talked myself into keeping it at 5.
Nice.
Literally. So I've played it once in the year since the review. I've also taught it twice. I think I taught it at Rocky Mountain Gaming Vacation and somewhere. I remember teaching it maybe at Empire. Yeah, it's a great game. Similar thing with Dan. someone brings it to me, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, because it's a quick, easy teach. Talk about fulfilling. I feel fulfilled. And there's tension in drafting the cards. There's a little bit of push your luck. It's a good game. It's really good. In fact, you know what? I don't own it. Empire has it, but I think I need to own a copy because I did like the 2-player game, and it's just so beautiful. I think Raquel and I could probably get this to the table on a somewhat regular basis. So I should probably pick up a copy.
It looks like it's $24 on Miniature Market.
Oh,
Nice plug there, Dan. Good work.
Yeah, it's got the bamboo board. That's worth it, right?
yeah, the bamboo board's really sweet. It's a fantastic production. The art's beautiful. It's a solid game. I was going to give it a 4, then I talked myself back into keeping it a 5.
History repeats itself.
If that tells you anything.
And I'm assuming I should probably play this at some point, guys, huh? Because it sounds like I've never played this.
Oh, yeah, you're going to love this.
Okay.
Yeah, Alex, this is right up your alley.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, make it happen. Make it happen this week.
This week? This particular week?
Your busy Towns of Cogs preparation for Kickstarter.
Towns of Cogs coming to you from Boot Jumper. It's on Boot Jumper this week because we can't say Kickstarter anymore. I don't know.
Oh.
Is Boot Jumper a good way to do it? Whatever.
No.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
It would be like Punch. It'd be like Punch Igniter.
Well.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, I'll see if I can get this one to the table at some point. I've heard enough good things. I've seen it at conventions. It's looked intriguing. And yeah, I probably need to play this. Dang it. Probably need to play this.
So what the Guild have to say?
Guild had a lot to say. Ben Ogden said, I really like the combination of mechanisms in this game. The draft and its secrecy in parts keeps that aspect of the game refreshing and intense. The multi-use cards are wonderful and the decisions made are quite important. This one for sure has stayed in my collection and has made it to the table a decent amount of time since we bought it. A 5 on the Ducal scale for me.
The Mr. Sean said, Kanagawa is still in my collection for sure. Beautiful, light game that I need to bring out more. I love the Ukiyo-e, which is the art style. I hope I didn't terribly mispronounce that. I love it as an art style and philosophical statement of our transient world, and the gameplay has just enough interesting choices to be both relaxing and engaging. I think that's probably true.
Mm-hmm. I would say so too.
It is a very chill game, but you're still in there trying to maximize points and take the best actions. But it's an interesting experience, definitely.
Andrew Capri says, when I first heard about Kanagawa and watched the review on the Game Boy Geeks channel, funny enough, it didn't seem like a game for me, and I didn't seek it out. But our friendly local game store recently had it out for a demo night. We gave it a try. I was very happily surprised. The beautiful art and drafting combined with press your luck really drew me. I also like the screw the dealer type mechanism because it reminds me of a classic card game from when I was younger. Euchre. I love Euchre. Euchre's great. I'd give it a 4 and would gladly play it to cool down after a big, meaty Euro. So this isn't quite a filler game. It's a little longer than that, is it?
Filler plus.
Filler plus.
Yeah, you're at like 30 to 45 probably.
Okay. Yeah. All right. It sounds kind of in that yellow zone.
30-ish. Yeah.
The yellow zone, 30 to 45 minutes. Coining that. Get in the zone, yellow zone.
All right, well, that's going to do it for the Dukes Double Take of Kanagawa. Staying at a 5 for both Sean and Dan, and Alex just needs to get off his butt and play this game. Well, I'll be honest with everyone out there. I'm a little sad to see the Dukes of Dice going from a weekly podcast to a bi-weekly podcast, but that's okay because there are a lot of amazing other board gaming podcasts. And with all the free time you now have not listening to a Dukes of Dice every single week, maybe you should check out the Tasty Minstrel Games podcast. The TMG podcast is hosted by the undead Viking himself, Lance Mixter. It comes out about every week and it packs quite a punch for a 30-minute podcast. So nice, short, to the point. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes discussion from Lance, from Michael Mendez, the CEO of Tasty Minstrel Games. They bring on a bunch of industry insiders. It's a great peek behind the curtain, so to speak, into the board gaming industry. Lots of cool stuff here. A fantastic inside board gaming podcast. So you can find that where all great podcasts are found, iTunes, Stitcher, that whole deal. Also, be sure to check out all of Tasty Minstrel's amazing games over at playtmg.com. Playtmg.com has all the information you need to find some amazing board games. So be sure to check out playtmg.com and the TMG podcast.
All right, this week for our discussion topic, I don't know, Sean, how do you want to start this one off? You want to start Arizona Game Fair? We want to start with Dan King plug-in stuff? What are we doing here?
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place. Let's just real quick talk about Arizona Game Fair. Dan, you and I were both out there. You are just always out there because that's where you live.
Yeah.
And I flew out to attend. It's down in Mesa, which is in the southeast portion of Phoenix, one of the suburbs there. And it was a 3-day convention. It was about 700 people, I think, was the final count that Andrew Long, who runs it, he gave on Twitter, I think, the other day, or maybe it was Facebook. And a nice solid convention, really decent game library, lots of cool stuff going on otherwise. What did you think of the con?
Yeah, it was good. For a local con, it grew. It doubled in size, almost doubled in size from last year, which was cool. And yeah, they expanded. They had a room, a theater specific for panels. They had, a room specific for signed up events, and then they had the gaming library with the open tables. So it had everything you think, a con should probably have as it's in its early years and such. But I like to see how they've grown over the last year. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they continue to grow. I know next year they're actually planning to do it around the same timing as the spring training. So that all the Cub fans, all the baseball fans can come out to see the good weather and also kind of do the gaming around the baseball stuff. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, because there's a couple stadiums that are just right nearby in Mesa for spring training. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. One of the cool things was, for people that don't know, I grew up in Phoenix and went to college in Phoenix, undergrad in Phoenix, and spent a good chunk of my young adulthood there. And so it was cool to see a lot of people that I hadn't seen in years, old friends from gaming, or people that I knew from the Imperial Outpost days, my local store out there on the west side. And so that was cool to see. Got to participate in a podcast with Glory Hound and the Uninvited Gamers, but mostly just got to play a bunch of not old games, but not new games. A bunch of new classics for me, a bunch of favorites. So I got to play Russian Railroads, Terraforming Mars, Takanoko, Scythe, Clank. So kind of, we were talking the last episode about needing to get my batteries recharged. So I said, you know what? I'm going to play games I really want to play. It's not going to be about playing a bunch of new stuff and learning a bunch of new stuff, but some of my favorites that I don't get to the table as much as I'd like them to. And so I think it did a good job of kind of recharging those gaming batteries of mine.
That's funny, because I did something very similar. Like I played Adrenaline and Spectre Ops, two not new games, but are both like ones that I love to play. People just suggested they'd wanted to play with me, and I did, and I was like, in both of them, it's always great when you play a game you haven't played in a while, and you play it and you go, why don't I play this more? And I said that for both of those, which is always good, because sometimes you'll play something that's old and you're like, what was I thinking of when I kept this game? Or sometimes it doesn't live up to what you thought it did, but these two, did that. They were like, oh man, I want to play this more.
Yeah. No, it was definitely a good time, and then I got to hang out a lot with my buddy Ellie. Stayed with him and his wife Raquel came out too, and then their daughter. One of the highlights though for me was we had breakfast from Chompy's.
Oh yeah, Chompy's is great.
Oh, I love Chompy's. I had a everything bagel with lox, cream cheese. There is not a good Jewish deli here in Albuquerque, and growing up, Chompy's was the place to go. Oh, it was so good. Oh, I miss it. But yeah, so I had a good time, and did you do the escape room?
No, we kept meaning to do it, and then we just didn't end up doing it. I wish I had.
Okay. Yeah, it was fun. It was a bit of a big crowd that we had, but it was cool. I've never done an escape room where it's set up on a site, like where it's like a mobile thing that they bring it in and set it up. It's always an established place, but I thought that was pretty cool. And then they also had, they didn't have a mega game, but they had someone there from a mega game company to advertise one they're doing in Phoenix. It's called Watch the Skies. Have you ever done a mega game, Dan?
No, I don't think it's my thing either, but I would try it once.
Yeah, we were talking about possibly flying out to Phoenix for the mega game on April 21st is when they're hosting it. And Raquel and I are looking at each other like, that date sounds really familiar. What is that date? And then we're both like, oh, that's Chewy's birthday. Yeah, I guess we're not flying out for that. So, but I think there will be one at Dice Tower Con. There was last year. So if they have one, we're definitely going to do that because it sounds really cool. But it's like an all-day thing. I mean, a whole day of the con is gone, but we'll see. I don't know. Any other thoughts, Stan, about Arizona Game Fair?
You helped me work out one day the whole time because you told me to bring Pulsar that we're reviewing, and then I couldn't find you, and I carried it around all day long.
Well, sorry about that, but I'm glad I could help. Yeah, we got a late start every day. The plan was to be there by 9, and we were constantly there by 11, 11:30, maybe noon. I will not say why, but that was a thing.
And I'll just say that Sean was on a panel with one of my friends here in town, Kat Ryder, she's Glory Hound online. She does the Glory Hound Uninvited Gamers podcast. And it was hilarious because I had a feeling that Sean didn't know what he had gotten himself into, because their podcast is just like lots of hilarity and shenanigans going on. And I could tell Sean was like, I don't think I knew what I got myself into. I mean, it was pretty funny.
No, it was a good time. And I talked a lot because I like to talk. So it was fun.
Yeah, their podcast is great too, the Glory Hound.
They'd originally invited us to do a Dukes of Dice live show there. And I think I am still so freaking terrified about the prospect of ever doing a Dukes of Dice live show. Like, it's bad enough doing the Dice Tower recordings, but where it's not an official event, we're just kind of there with microphones and whatever else on site. I don't know, Sean. Did doing that assuage those fears, make them grow? Like, what's the reaction in the wake of that?
No, I think we should do a show at Dice Tower Con this year.
Okay,
let's put it on the calendar. Let's do it.
Man.
Or would you rather do it a Geek Way? You want to do it a Geek Way?
Are you? Oh yeah, that's right. You're coming.
Well, more than likely.
Yay! Yeah.
More likely than not.
Something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyway, let us know on the Guild if you think we should do a live show.
We can't just figure it out. We have to plan these in advance, Alex.
Nah, we're good. I know people. It's fine. Hey, Dan, you got a Kickstarter. What's cooking with the Kickstarter? Season 6, my man.
I mean, if you're tired of talking about it, that's fine. We can just wrap up the episode.
I'll do a quick Allegro on it. How about that? Yeah, so, I mean, for the last 5 years, I've produced over 1,500 board game reviews, and, well, not all reviews, but videos about board games, with the majority of them being reviews. Last year, Season 5 did 400 videos. Of course, those include the Allegro ones. And so over the last 5 years, I've been doing reviews, doing Allegro reviews that allow you to spend 2 minutes to see if you want to watch the full review. You get a 1 minute final thoughts, 1 minute overview, very streamlined, so that you can basically look at 5 times more games to see which ones you're interested in. Help you set up and play games by teaching you them in my rule schools. We're going to hopefully have my wife on some more and do some gamer-tested, spouse-approved videos this year. That's going to be one that it's basically games that gamers like, but also non-gamers can also like. So, yeah, I've been doing that for the last 5 years, and every year I run an annual Kickstarter because all my content's free. And so it's up live now. When this episode drops, it's going to be going to, I believe, March 13th or 12th, somewhere around there. And there's plenty of, if you'd like to support, that's great. There's also plenty of extra special sort of rewards going on there. All sorts of unique ones. There's some that if you're an aspiring publisher or designer, there's some of the top dogs in the industry like Bruno Cathala and Antoine Bauza, and from publishers, Renegade and Game Games and Yellow, things like that. You can do those type of things, and you get like a 1 hour private consultation with them. There's also some cool things I added this year. I added a game bag, so a bag you can hoard all your games around with my logo on it. A way to stay hydrated at conventions with my working out and stuff. So yeah, you can clip on this collapsible water bottle that you can bring to conventions with my logo on it. Some zipper pulls, but then we got some game stuff too. So we got stuff from Deception Murder Hong Kong, a brand new layout for Dragon Castle that is basically going to be shaped like the Game Boy Geek glasses. We got some King of Tokyo promos, some King Domino and Queen Domino stickers for the meeples. We got a custom Sagrada promo card that has my logo on it, and it's all red and black dice that you'll need. A promo for Codenames, a 10-pack of new cards for board game type clues. Let's see, we got Bunny Kingdom, Ex Libris, Whistle Stop, Seven Wonders, Manhattan Project, Engie Empire, Dominion, Champions of Midgard new monsters, storage bags for Kemet, a Lagranha 6 promo pack. So there's a ton of stuff in there. In addition to all that, there's also some cool game bundles, which bundle popular games with everything that's in the Kickstarter. And then just most recently, I just added a couple of pairs of tickets to BGG Con, which is not open to the public yet, and it sells out in like an hour every year. The tickets are like $150 a piece this year coming up. So there's a cool bundle where you can get a pair of tickets plus everything in the campaign, and it's like a super good deal. There's only 2 of those left. So, but yeah, there's lots of cool things. And I just ask that you could possibly maybe support me. This year is different from the rest, that I actually put myself out there, which is scary as all get out. Is Kickstarter, the way it works is you set a funding goal. If you don't fund it, you don't get any money. So I set it at a funding goal that I hoped we could make based upon previous year's performance. But the real goal is for me to do this full time, which is about 3x what my funding goal is. And so I put it out there on the video and the stuff saying, hey, look, it's a dream. It might happen. The way it might happen is by you helping me, and I wanted to at least let people know my intentions. Whether or not I make it, that's fine, but I wanted to at least let people know this is what I want to do. I have so many extra ideas, and I'd love to get there.
Very cool. So, yeah, just going through all the lists and everything out there, like you mentioned, it looks really cool. I am very interested in those Kemet storage bags.
I knew you would be.
Yeah, that looks really sweet. Also, just be careful when you say zipper pull that you're very clear and enunciating because some people could hear the wrong thing.
Oh, speaking of, Alex asked me to do a sax serenade live here, so I actually have a limit. I had somebody, a fan last year, say my husband is the biggest fan of yours. It's his birthday. Could you do like a saxophone serenade or a saxophone serenade birthday for him and kind of tell him happy birthday? And I did it, and she said it moved him so much that A, she would think about that, but B, that I would do it. And he was so excited, and she told me some of the things she said afterwards, and it made me think, that's really cool. Let's put that on there. So like there's a reward level where I can do a saxophone serenade and, for birthdays or anniversaries and say some custom things and stuff. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really sweet. Very cool. So like you said, Dan, this I looked up, it ends March 14th.
Okay. Yep. And you can easily find it by searching Kickstarter, or if you go to GameBoyGeek.com, there's a landing page that takes you right there.
And we'll even put a little link in the show notes. So people
perfect.
just want to click on that, they can go check that out. Because you absolutely produce amazing content, Dan.
I appreciate it.
And I'd love to see you keep doing that and hopefully be able to do this full time.
That'd be amazing. Thanks for the help.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Dan, sadly, our time has come to an end here. It's always great having you on.
Yeah, I love coming. Next time, maybe we'll have to review a game that I actually don't like. Because usually you're like, what do you want to review? I'm like, I always push you stuff that I'm excited to talk about.
Hey, that's fine.
Duchy point of order, sirs.
Yes?
We have honorable mentions to do.
I know. I was getting to that.
Well, I don't know. You were always saying your buys. I don't know. I thought you were jumping the gun.
No, I'm just saying time's coming to an end. And then, but before we go...
Okay, whatever.
Go take it away, Alex.
Nicole Capri had Rollin' White and Nerdy as one of the episode title suggestions. That made the honorable mentions. Pretty nice one there. Also kind of a Weird Al reference, which I always dig. Brett Mowers came with Dr. Game Geek, How I Learned to Start Painting and Love the Stars. Joshua Weddle with Sovereign Star Sketch. BJ from Board Game Gumbo with Sax in the Duke City, possibly a runner-up. And Chad Jacobson with possibly the most clever of the episode title suggestions, just not the winner, Pointillism. Really dug that one. There we go.
We got through that real quick, Alex.
Yep.
You have to go to the bathroom or something? We could just pause and...
No.
By the way, any Doctor Strangelove reference is a winner with me, because that's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
Alex, have you seen Doctor Strangelove?
I have.
That's weird that you've seen that.
I've seen a weird set of movies, Sean, and not seen a weird set of movies.
I would not have expected you to see Doctor Strangelove.
I have seen it. Back, I think, in middle school or high school. Anyway.
Oh.
Yep.
Did you see it? Did they show it to you in school?
I think so.
Oh, that's weird. I actually showed it to my 8th graders, which may have been questionable. It talks about some weird stuff.
Good job.
All right. Well, Dan, if people, other than the Kickstarter, which again, we'll put a link in our show notes, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Best way, GameBoyGeek.com. Everywhere you want to find me is in the upper right of the website.
Okay. Simple, easy, straightforward. I like it.
And also, if you happen to be almost drowning in a river and you yell, "Help me, Game Boy Geek," we'll come to your rescue. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, you know what? That's crazy. In the opening, we got so tied up on talking about us beating each other with the intro and how long we could go, whatever. I forgot that you had said the part-time lifeguard, and I didn't know what the heck you were talking about, but you just tied it together, Alex.
I just tied it all together, Dan.
Like a nice little bow.
Yep.
That was just really nice. By the way, here's a hint. Never get in a who can say something longer battle with someone that has lungs of a saxophone.
We need to actually do this in person at some point and try and do a challenge, because I don't know. I got some pipes. We'll see.
This is going to be the worst rap battle ever.
Yeah, probably.
All right. Well, and once again, before we leave, just a quick reminder, go to dukesdice.com/vote-dukes. Help nominate us for Golden Geek Award, third year, 3-peat. Let's do it. Well, Dan, thank you again. That's going to do it then for episode 170, which we've titled Artistic Highlights 2849. Fantastic title. Thanks again to Tim Tix for that name. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Dan.
Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on February 17th, 2018. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out dicetowernetwork.com, and for all the latest in the Duchy, go to dukesofdice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games and Arcane Wonders. You can check out all their awesome titles at playtmg.com and arcanewonders.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!